Hello, I'm Dick Corsell, and you're watching Community Care Network Connections. Community Care Network is the parent organization of Rutland Mental Health Services and Rutland Community Programs. And today on the program, we're going to be talking with our folks from our Developmental Disabilities Division Community Access Program about transition services from being younger to aging into adulthood and the types of services that they provide. So today with me is Ellen Malone, who is in the center here, and Ellen is the Vice President of Developmental Services for Rutland Mental Health Services. And then we also have Barb Weintraub. Barb is the Director of Child and Family Services for the Community Access Program. And Jessalyn Gustin is Director of Community Sports for the Community Access Program, all within Rutland Mental Health Services. So we have featured programs, a number of these connection programs, because developmental services is so big within Rutland Mental Health Services on various topics, and Jessalyn has been a guest on those. And they've included a range of topics, including a very interesting one a few months ago about how programs like CAP started with the transition from the Brandon Training School closing to community-based services like we have now. So I'm going to start with Ellen as overseeing CAP. Tell the viewers a little bit about the Community Access Program of Rutland Mental Health Services, and who does it serve, and how did that sort of come into being?
The Community Access Program, as part of Rutland Mental Health Services, is considered the designated agency for serving individuals with developmental disabilities. And we are currently serving 471 individuals with developmental disabilities, 140 children and their families, and 331 adults. And we currently offer a wide range of services depending upon individual needs. And in terms of where services have come from the Brandon Training School, your programs have probably captured it, because all our services are really based in the community, whether it's home supports or community supports or employment. And we're still very individually based on individuals' needs and dreams and goals, as well as what kind of services are available based on the funding individuals have. So that's a really brief overview.
Okay, I'm going to now switch to Barb in terms of who's eligible for CAP services. And again, when we say CAP, we're talking about Community Access Program of Rutland Mental Health Services and Developmental Services. So who's eligible? I mean, who would be taking advantage of the services that CAP offers? And what are some of the ages that are served? What are the types of things that are done at the CAP division?
We support individuals with developmental disabilities and their families from birth through end of life. There's 3 parts to eligibility. One is diagnostic eligibility. The individuals we support have either an intellectual disability or an autism spectrum disorder diagnosed before the age of 18, or rather identified before the age of 18, and they also need to have deficits in adaptive behavior. The second part of eligibility requires that people need to have Medicaid in order to get services from the Community Access Program. And depending on the intensity of their needs, they may need to meet a state funding priority for certain kinds of funding. So that's all part of the eligibility process.
Okay, well, so you serve basically from birth, as you said, to the end of life with CAP. So that's a very wide range of services. What are the types of services for younger people? Because what we're going to be talking about on today's show with the 3 of you is that transition. For example, for a person who is young and starts receiving CAP services, as that person ages, I'm assuming the services change for them. But talk a little bit, Barb, and Ellen and Jessalyn, feel free to jump in at any time, in terms of the type of services. Let's say you get a very young person in CAP, the types of things that they can expect in terms of what you do.
We have 2 types of supports currently that primarily support children and their families. One is our Flexible Family Funding Program, which is a program that offers a small financial subsidy to families to help support their child with a developmental disability. It's a sliding scale, and it's not a lot of money, but generally it can help families get through some tough places. The second program that we have for children is our Bridge program, and the Bridge program offers care coordination to help link families to other resources in the community, whether it be medical resources, therapies, or recreational or leisure resources. It also helps support families to coordinate multiple services, including school supports. And that's available to children up through the age of 22 if they're living with their families.
Ellen or Jessalyn, anything you want to add on that?
I think the other thing that we do if a family comes to our door, we can also help connect them with potentially some other services available to children, such as children's personal care services, which we don't provide, but we can help connect them with. We can connect them with potentially some other resources in the community, like Vermont Family Network. The funding available for children through the state system right now is limited because of resource issues.
Okay. I'm going to, let's keep with Ellen and talk about how services change as people get older. We're talking, we mentioned, and Barb had certainly mentioned the services that are available for younger people. But as they get older, how do services change? What are some of the differences between the type of services that you offer, say, a 10-year-old versus somebody that's aging out into a more independent lifestyle?
As individuals age into adulthood, age 18 and on, they become more eligible for a wider array of services through our program. And that, again, is just based on all the state rules around funding. So as a child becomes an adult, they could become more eligible for home supports, community supports, employment services, service coordination, clinical supports, and respite. And all the services are really individually based, so it's part of the whole process of coming to our door and figuring out what each person needs. And then again, the state has some criteria around the type of services somebody may be eligible for, the kind of funding somebody may be eligible for. And we try to work with the individual and the family so that the services match their needs and their hopes and dreams.
Okay. Jessalyn, what are some of the things that need to be considered for a successful transition? I mean, when you're dealing with an individual, whether they've been with CAP for a short period of time or they've been with CAP for many, many years as they transition to adulthood, what are some of the things that need to be considered to make that successful?
With any transition or change in someone's life, I think it's about kind of envisioning what it is you want for the future and then having the right people around the table to help you plan and establish really what your needs are in achieving those goals. So, you know, we like to be at the table early. The transition process starts in school for people at the age of 16, but it could start before that. Family and the student really drive that based on the information that they have about what they want for after school. We are at the table looking at what your hobbies, interests, strengths are. We help to assess what the level of need will be after. You know, are you going to need supports in a job? Are you going to need supports in the community? Are you going to need supports at home? What does the family structure look like, and what supports can they provide, and what do they need in addition to be successful? And really then just talking about what the goals and dreams are, like we talked about, because that becomes kind of a lifelong process for people, and helping people to achieve what those goals are. So, you know, we really want to try to wrap our services around and pull from, if we can't provide the service, are there community organizations that can help us with that?
Okay. So when you're working with a young person, in particular around school, and if they are enrolled in some type of educational program as they age out, what does that transition Like, how do you work with, for example, some of the providers that may be offering that component? Is that part of your transition process to kind of engage?
So we like to be invited to a school meeting either by the family, or if an individual is already receiving support through the Bridge program, there might be a care coordinator who attends the team meeting. There are also, Voc Rehab might be at the table to look at employment. And we have a transition and employment manager who can come to help to develop jobs for employment after school. So attending team meetings and being at the table, as I said before, I think having the right people at the table is really important to be able to look at all of the options and really get the information shared that needs to be shared, so that when school ends and we step in to support the families and the individual, that we know who the person is and how to support them, and that it can be very seamless. So.
Okay. Barbara, I do want to ask you about the differences in school supports and developmental supports. Before I do, though, Ellen, one of the programs that we featured on, or one of the topics that we featured on Connections was a career choices program with through CAP, or the employment piece. How does that fit into some of the transition? Because Jessalyn just had mentioned that transition from school to perhaps more of an independent life. Is employment something? I know that is a big thing at CAP, and trying to secure meaningful work for people that really want that, and perhaps that's one of the goals that a younger person may have as they age into adulthood. But could you talk just a little bit about that and the types of programs, the services that CAP offers around that?
Sure. Well, employment is a goal we hope that every individual will consider. And the way our state system is set up, if somebody has a job when they leave high school, they will get funding for ongoing job supports if they need it. And so Career Choices through Jess's program can provide job coaching, job follow-up, job development, helping an individual actually grow their career. One of the sort of shortcomings of the current system of care for adults is if you don't have a job and you need ongoing supports, the system currently doesn't fund that easily. So we really want to work with schools to try to help individuals graduate with a job. There's other ways of helping individuals get a job, hooking them up with Voc Rehab. There's some other funding that can help do that job development piece. The state's very focused on employment, and there's a new statewide system of care plan that will be implemented this July, which may actually open some of the current limits on funding for job supports, because again, a lot of the services that we have available really depend upon the individual being given the funding so that they can be provided those services. Career Choices is Jess's, so I want to look at you and ask what else you'd like to say. It's very individually based, job developers and coaches.
We do believe that employment, if somebody has identified that as a goal for themselves, that we want to support that for everyone. We think everyone can be placed and contribute in meaningful employment in the community. And the funding piece, that does put some pressure on at the end with the schools, but I think that we've developed some really great relationships where we're able to, some of the services that we can provide and the networks that we have with the different employers we're working with in the community, bring those to the school. And we've seen some people transition in competitive employment in high school, and then after high school that we've picked up the support. It's been very seamless. So you know, for instance, we had an individual who was had done a lot of work experience previously with the school, and they didn't have the right employment setting opportunity for competitive employment at graduation, and we were able to come in, assess the individual's strengths, where they would be a good match, and then work with the school to place that person in competitive employment before they graduated so that they would be eligible for the funding for long-term support. And we've really seen this person step up their hours. They've received a pay raise because of those long-term supports that they were able to receive. So it's a crucial piece of looking at employment as an option. Just, you know, as with any other graduating high school person, employment is a big piece to your success in your community and your life. So.
Good. Yeah, we certainly, the show that we did a while back on the transition, the closing of the Brandon Training School and the move towards community-based, I mean, really stressed the fact that this being an active and productive member of the community is so vital to everyone, and that has been a focus of CAP. And of course, Ellen, you've had extensive experience at the state of Vermont level in terms of many of these systems, and know that in and out in terms of funding. And now I'm going to switch to Barb, who also has many years of experience doing this type of work. But what are the differences, Barb? We've been talking about school supports and then developmental services supports. So what's the difference between those two things, and how does that part of the transition for someone?
One of the hardest things for families to get used to, I think, is the idea that school is an entitlement. Every child with special needs is entitled to school services up through the age of 22, or to the age of 22. With our supports, it's needs-based. You've got to get through the eligibility door, and eligibility for an IEP or for special services in schools is different from the eligibility for our programs. So families and schools can't assume that just because a student meets the criteria for special services that they're also going to be eligible for developmental services after they graduate. So that's something that we really need to look at early on. Once you get through eligibility, depending on what an individual's needs are, there's also funding criteria. So again, it's totally a needs-based system, and we've got to look at what each individual student needs and is going to need when they graduate, and then do what's necessary to get the funding to secure that.
There's a lot of case management type services and coordination, I would imagine, that goes into that. So, Barb, let's just continue. Walk me through a typical transition and what supports are available during this time.
Okay, well, it depends somewhat on where a student's starting. With our Bridge program, we've had more and more contact with students while they're still in school. So often, a Bridge care coordinator will be with the student and with the family and be part of the school meetings during their transition years in school. Another way that transition happens is with someone new coming in, being referred by the school, where we get involved in school meetings early on if possible, and then if family doesn't need supports, we may not, we may be part of a transition meeting around age 16, but they may not want anything, and we're not in the picture until much closer to graduation, at which point we go to school meetings, we can explain what the options are and what the process is, and get involved at that point. So someone may be coming in or during the transition stage through our intake team. Whatever's happening, whether someone's already got care coordination or whether someone is new to developmental services and is working with our intake team, we start with a needs assessment. We look at what the individual is going to need and based on those needs, what they might be eligible for, and then we'll either make a referral or develop a funding proposal to present to the state to request the funding that's necessary to meet whatever needs we've identified. Also, what's available when someone graduates from school depends on their age. The way the state funding system is set up, different funding priorities are dependent on a student being different ages. I think the employment services are not available to a student until they're 19. So if students are looking at graduating before that age, we need to be in there telling people, that what's going to be available and what's not going to be available until certain stages. Community supports are also not available until an individual is 19 years old. So if students are graduating earlier, we're looking at a whole different set of opportunities for them.
Yeah, I'm going to ask Ellen, obviously being very familiar with these systems, having worked at the state level, and what Barbara's just described and some of the work that Jessalyn does as well, sounds there's a lot of moving pieces to this, a lot of moving parts. And I would imagine it could be very confusing to a family, for example, to understand, as Barb had said, with the transition from school where there are mandates that the services will be provided up to the age of 22, and that's a given, and then adulthood comes along, and suddenly there are many factors at play. How is CAP organized to manage all of this? It sounds like there's just a lot of moving pieces. How do you stay on top of this? And also how you're keeping abreast and moving the state in the right direction on some of these things, because you obviously know this in and out.
Well, I'm hearing like 5 different questions.
Yeah.
So keep me on track here. I think we have a really skilled intake team who can help walk families through the process. And I have been in the field for like almost 38 years, and I understand the system, but it continually changes. And so a family is going to need the guidance of a service coordinator or intake worker, and we can help them understand what the rules are. And like I said, there's a new system of care plan going into effect this July, and that's going to change some of the rules. So, you know, we try to keep abreast through various statewide meetings and provider meetings so that we can take back the latest interpretation to help us work with families and individuals to put together funding proposals that we hope will meet the new criteria. I think that we also have a commitment to try to be as creative as possible within the rules, and sometimes knowing the rules is very helpful in figuring out what we can actually help people expect as part of their future. In terms of advocacy, we try to keep our standing committee informed, we try to keep families informed, and advocating at the legislature level is very helpful. When there are public hearings around the state system of care plan, it's very helpful because the state really listens to individuals and families who are receiving services. And so all that advocacy can make a difference in what the state rules are.
Great. See that you answered every one of those questions. You did. That was a trick question, just to see if you actually could coordinate all of that, and you did marvelously. But there are a lot of moving pieces to this, obviously, and knowing the system as you do, and as Barb does and Jessalyn does, is absolutely essential, because it sounds like there are just so many pieces. If they don't come together, services can be compromised or you know, not given.
It's a very complex system, and if we can understand the system well enough just to help families who are probably feeling, an individual, somewhat overwhelmed, just to say, tell us what you need and let us do the work that's needed. It's really hard when an individual, a student's had 35 hours of school support during the week, and all of a sudden they find out that they're eligible for 15 hours a week through adult services, and the changes, the impact on the individual in their life. So again, we know the rules, and we're going to try to help people understand them and use them as best we can to get the best service package available for individuals.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Jessalyn, we'll switch gears just a little bit. We've heard from Barb and Ellen in terms of many of the services and the transition from school to adulthood. So, what does life look like after graduation for someone with developmental disabilities in the Rutland area? What does it look like?
We see people thriving in their communities, and it looks very different for each individual based on, as we've talked about, what they've identified as their goals and dreams. There's opportunities for success in, as we talked about, employment or in the community, contributing, whether it's through volunteer opportunities or different avenues, you know, taking classes. and in their homes, you know, supporting people to choose where they live and who they live with, and supporting them in achieving those goals as well too. We've seen the employment rate for individuals with developmental disabilities in Rutland County grow quite a bit in the last couple of years, and we're obviously very proud of that at our employment program, being able to match people with meaningful employment, which helps people to achieve their goals, whether it's being able to take a class or purchase a computer or you know, access taking a trip or things like that, the things that jobs allow you to do. I know we've been on to talk before about the new program with Castleton, the College Steps program, and that we've really seen people flourish as well, being able to now access the college ongoing educational experiences and the college experience. I was at the graduation a couple weeks ago, and it was pretty moving to see the first four students graduate and the whole graduating class stand up and give them you know, recognition, and the faculty as well. So I think really, as people choose, we try to grow our services so that we can support people in what their goals and dreams are. I think Rutland County is just a great place that does embrace people and is open to diversity and what people can contribute, and we see that in the way that people's lives are thriving. And just as with any of us, I think people sometimes, you know, it can be the roller coaster of life, but we're really there to be on the journey with people, and yeah, so I think it's a good place for folks with disabilities and their families to live, and I think the service coordinators at CAP and the staff really are committed to making sure that people are getting the services and the supports that they need and working within the system. So.
Right. Anything else that, Ellen, you might want to add about this? Or certainly how people can get information about what we've just been talking about. What are the best ways to contact you? If you are an employer, or you may have a family member or someone that you know that could benefit from CAP services, how do they get in touch with you guys?
Well, our website provides a lot of information just about who we are, and that's the Rutland Mental Health website. But in terms of in-person contact, if you call our main number, 802-775-0828, and ask for intake, you'll be connected with our intake team. And that's for people who perhaps don't have a bridge care coordinator or any other connection at CAP. And our intake team can walk people through the process, talk to them about the individual, what services they may be eligible for, what the application process is like, and if it's not really an individual with a developmental disability, where else they may go for accessing some supports and services. So give us a call. You know, we're really hoping the community to develop better and stronger community partnerships, and so that folks have better information about who we are and what we can offer folks. So.
And I do know a lot of, shows like this, for example, really help elevate awareness of the type of work that you do. And I know the three of you are very visible at the community and regional and state level with respect to work and developmental services. And it's great to be able to talk about this. Is a topic that we haven't addressed yet with CAP. And CAP does a lot of great things, so we look forward in the coming months to picking another topic that viewers will be interested in. So. Well, I do want to thank our guests in today's program for Community Care Network Connections, and Barbara Weintraub, thank you very much, and Ellen Malone and Jessalyn Gustin. It's been a great program, and if people want more information, they can certainly contact Rutland Mental Health Services and ask for the Community Access Program, and the website is www.rmhsccn.org. And I'm Dick Corsell, and you have been watching Community Care Network Connections.